Final Fantasy VII is one of the most popular and beloved video games of all time. The game is so massive that it eclipses every other entry in the long-running franchise. The fact that people are anticipating the Final Fantasy VII Remake even more than a new entry in the series speaks volumes. FFVII was first developed on the SNES. We all know FFVII as the first game in the series to feature polygonal and pre-rendered CG graphics. What you may not know is that it was originally going to be sprite-based like its predecessors. Squaresoft was developing FFVII on the SNES at the same time Chrono Trigger was being produced. The studio went back and forth between sprite and 3D concepts before settling on the latter. Since the SNES couldn't handle 3D graphics, production of the game would inevitably shift to the PlayStation. FFVII was going to be a detective game. As crazy as it may sound, FFVII was conceptualized as a detective story. It was going to feature a sleuth named Detective Joe who was investigating the Mako reactors. Development on this version didn't get far since the team was preoccupied with making Chrono Trigger. The entire plot of FFVII would go through a complete overhaul after an unfortunate tragedy. Hironobu Sakaguchi's mother's passing completely changed FFVII during the course of development. Series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi's mother passed away. Because of that, FFVII's story shifted from being a detective tale to being one about loss, love, friendship, and reincarnation. Because of this sad turn of events, Sakaguchi decided to kill off Aeris. He wanted players to know what it was like to face the unexpected death of a loved one. He also wanted to have a hero whose demise isn't noble. Sakaguchi's way of dealing with the loss of his mother helped make FFVII the classic it is today. Early FFVII concepts became Parasite Eve and Xenogears. Many of the initial ideas Squaresoft had when developing FFVII never made it into the actual game. Not being one to leave a good idea unused, the company would instead recycle these concepts for other games. The vision of FFVII being a detective tale set in a near-future New York City would eventually be used for Parasite Eve. One of the early pitched scripts for FFVII went on to become the main story of Xenogears. Even Final Fantasy VIII villain, Edia Kramer, was originally created for FFVII. FFVII was the most expensive game of its time these days. Expensive AAA games cost around $60 million to produce. FFVII cost $45 million back in 1997, but adjusting it for inflation, it would have cost $65 million today. If you factor in its $100 million marketing budget, it's easy to see how it was the most expensive game of the time. Even by today's standards, FFVII cost a pretty penny to produce. Fan theory suggests Cloud killed Aeris. One of the reasons folks hate FFVII antagonist Sephiroth so much is because of how he mercilessly kills the beloved Aeris. But did he actually end her life? According to some fans, Sephiroth's sword severed Aeris' spine but missed any vital organs. The pain of being run through caused Aeris to pass out. Believing her to be dead, Cloud lowers the unconscious Aeris into a pool of water and inadvertently drowns the helpless flower girl. It's a wild conspiracy theory, but it has persisted to this day. Magnets keep the Buster Sword in place. Cloud's Buster Sword is easily one of the largest weapons in pop culture history. We don't know how Cloud is able to wield it with those spindly arms of his, but we can tell you how he holsters it. On Cloud's initial character design, you can see a small circle on his back. That circle is a magnet used to hold up the oversized sword. This is how Cloud can run around without it falling off his back. It's still silly, but if it works, it works. Hidden picture of Sakaguchi in Rocket Town. FFVII director Hironobu Sakaguchi makes an appearance in the game, sort of. When exploring Rocket Town, players can enter some of its buildings. One home has a portrait that is different from others in the game. Closer inspection reveals that it is a picture of Sakaguchi himself. It's fun to know that a man who poured everything he had into FFVII is actually in the game. Cloud was almost a brunette with slicked back hair. Besides his ridiculously huge sword, Cloud's defining characteristic is his spiky blonde hair. But Cloud wasn't always meant to look this way. Originally, the dashing hero was supposed to be a brunette with slicked back hair. While this would have been an easier character design for the developers, it was decidedly boring, hence why Cloud got a new and more outlandish hairdo. Jimi Hendrix-inspired One Winged Angel is one of the most popular songs in all of video games. Even folks who have never played a Final Fantasy game have likely heard it at one point. As unique as the song is, its inspiration comes from a pretty interesting source. The song's opening staccato riff is an homage to Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. Longtime Final Fantasy composer Nobu Uematsu is a big fan of rock music, so I guess it's not too surprising he was inspired by the legendary guitar god.